Okay, here's a thought. Can artificial intelligence develop its own social rules? Like its own biases, maybe even trigger social change, but without us explicitly programming any of that in. Today, we're doing a deep dive into some really fascinating new research. It explores exactly that, how large language models, LLMs, behave when they interact with each other, kind of like in a simulated society.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. We're looking closely at a paper called Emergent Social Conventions and Collective Bias in LLM Populations by Ariel Flint-Ashry and colleagues. And honestly, it offers some, well, truly surprising insights into how AI systems might actually start to form their own social structures, the real basics of it.
Right. So our mission today is to unpack three big questions from this study. First, can universal rules like conventions just pop up spontaneously in these LLM groups? Second, how do biases, if they exist, influence these rules? And third, how sticky are these rules? Can a small group, a minority, actually change them once they're set? Okay, let's get into it. So maybe let's start with social conventions, just to be clear. For humans, these are, well, the unwritten rules, right? Like handshakes or bowing, or even just how we use language. They help us coordinate. The theory has always been they can just sort of emerge from local interactions spontaneously. But can AI actually do that?
That's exactly what they tested. The researchers set up these populations of LLM agents, and they used a model. It's called a naming game.
Hmm.
Basically, imagine two AI agents are randomly paired up. Their goal, simple. Agree on a name, say, a letter of the alphabet. If they pick the same one, boom, they get points. It's a really stripped-down way to see if coordination emerges without anyone telling them how to coordinate. Each agent remembers its past interactions, its little history, but it has no clue about the whole population or any, grand plan, just local information.
Okay, hold on. So these LLM populations, totally decentralized, no boss, no top-down rules, they managed to create universally adopted conventions just by talking to each other locally.
That sounds, well, pretty significant for AI. It really is.
Yeah.
And yeah, it wasn't like flipping a switch. At the start, success rates were pretty low. Agents were just guessing randomly. But the interesting part is how quickly those local interactions led to this shift.
Okay.
From disorder to order. One convention rapidly took over. They call it a winner-take-all situation. And for most of the different LLM types they tested, a shared convention was basically locked in by round 15 of these interactions. Pretty fast.
And this wasn't just like two agents agreeing on A. You're saying this worked for larger groups too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This convergence happened in populations as big as 200 agents, and it worked even if they had lots of choices, like all 26 letters of the alphabet as possible names. So it suggests the process is quite stable, quite robust. And interestingly, the paper notes that the way these AI groups develop norms looks qualitatively quite similar to how human groups do it in experiments.
So there might be some fundamental dynamics of coordination happening here, whether it's humans or AI.
Seems that way, yeah.
Okay, so step one, AI can spontaneously create social rules. Check, that's already huge. But then the really critical question is, which rules? Which conventions do they pick? You'd think maybe it's random, right? Like any letter has an equal shot. But this is where the research got really interesting and maybe a bit concerning.
You're right, it wasn't random at all. The results showed a very different picture. The chance of a specific name, like a specific letter, becoming the group's convention wasn't uniform, not even close. Some names were just much more likely to win out. And crucially, this preference, this bias, was different depending on which LLM they use. They tested several, Llama 2, Llama 3 variants, Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and each had its own sort of favorite conventions.
Okay, so why? What causes that bias? Is it just that some LLMs are inherently biased? Like maybe Llama 2 just really likes the letter Q for some deep-seated reason? Or is it something about the setup, like the order they see the names?
Good questions. They thought about that too. Individual LLMs can definitely have biases. One test did show a model strongly preferring A if it was an option, but they ruled out the presentation order thing. They randomized the order of names for every agent in every single interaction, so that wasn't it.
Okay.
But here's the kicker. This collective bias, the group preference, it emerged even when the individual agents, tested totally alone in their very first interaction, showed no bias. They seemed neutral initially.
Whoa. Okay, wait. So the individuals start out unbiased, but the group ends up biased. How does that work? It's not the individuals. It's not how the info is presented.
It's the process. The bias emerges from the process of forming the convention itself. It's an emergent property of the group dynamics. Think about it. Agents are having all these interactions, remembering successes and failures. This creates an asymmetry. Like if an agent succeeded in an interaction, they almost always stuck with that winning name, like 99.4% of the time. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, sure. If it works, stick with it.
Exactly. But if they failed, they almost always switch names, about 97.3% of the time. So just after a few interactions, maybe around the third round, you start seeing some names gain momentum. They become stronger conventions because they were involved in early successes, maybe just by chance. Others become weaker.
So the bias isn't programmed in. It kind of snowballs out of the interaction history itself.
Precisely.
And the big takeaway here for anyone thinking about using these LLMs in the real world,
Hmm.
testing one LLM by itself for bias just isn't enough, is it?
Not even close.
Because the group interactions can create these new emergent biases that you'd never spot by looking at just one agent.
Right. And that's a massive challenge if we want AI systems that are, fair and aligned with what we actually want them to do. You have to look at the system level.
Okay, that's a lot to think about regarding bias. So let's move to the third question. Once a convention, biased or not, is established in this AI society, how permanent is it? Can it be changed?
Another key question. Can you shift the norm? So to test this, they introduced what they called a committed minority, basically a small group of adversarial agents. These agents were programmed to just stubbornly push a different new convention no matter what happened in their interactions. They just kept proposing their alternative name. It's kind of simulating how maybe in online communities, a small group can try to introduce a new slang word or a new behavior.
Okay, so they set up these AI populations that had already settled on a convention, maybe a strong one that emerged easily or a weak one that was less likely, and then they dropped in this small, stubborn group pushing something new. What happened?
They found a tipping point, a critical mass. If the size of that committed minority reached a certain threshold, a specific percentage of the population, boom, the entire population flipped and adopted the new convention.
The whole group changed.
The whole group. But if the minority was below that threshold, you just get a mix. Both conventions would kind of coexist, but the original one usually remained dominant.
That's fascinating. And I bet that tipping point wasn't the same in all situations.
You bet right. It depended crucially on two things. First, the strength of the convention they were trying to overturn. Stronger conventions, those ones that were intrinsically more likely to emerge in the first place, needed a larger committed minority to flip them. Makes sense, they're more entrenched.
Like more inertia.
Exactly. For example, with the Llama 2 model, trying to flip a strong convention required the committed minority to be, get this, 67% of the population. That's hardly a minority anymore.
Wow. Yeah, that's a majority needing to be committed.
Right. But the second factor was the LLM model itself. Different models had wildly different thresholds. Llama 370B Instruct, for instance, only needed a tiny 2% minority to flip a weak convention. Just a couple of stubborn agents could sway the whole group.
Only 2%.
Yeah, and even weirder, one model, Llama 3.170B Instruct, actually flipped away from a weak convention spontaneously without any committed minority at all.
Just on its own.
Yeah, apparently its own internal biases were strong enough against that weak convention that it just naturally gravitated towards a stronger alternative over time.
So the models themselves have very different levels of maybe stubbornness or suggestibility.
You could put it that way. They talk about it in terms of a basin of attraction. Think of it like a valley. Stronger conventions have a deeper, wider valley, a larger basin. It's harder for the system to climb out of that valley and switch to a different one. It takes more energy or a larger push from that minority.
Okay, I can visualize that. Deeper valley, harder to escape.
Mm-hmm.
And the implications here feel pretty significant too, these tipping points. That could be good, right? Maybe a way to steer AI systems towards better outcomes, like tackling big global problems if we could model them this way.
Potentially, yes, if you could introduce the right committed minority idea.
But it also sounds risky. Like, could someone exploit this? Use a small group to manipulate a larger AI system, maybe inject harmful ideas or biases? Like an injection attack, but for social norms.
That's definitely a risk they highlight, especially in complex multi-agent systems where these dynamics could play out. Social control, manipulation. It opens up some worrying possibilities.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've gone through quite a journey here into AI social dynamics. What are the big takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, I think there are three main things. First, and maybe most fundamentally, LLMs can develop social conventions all on their own, just through local interactions. Very human-like in that sense. Second, and this is crucial, these group interactions can generate collective biases you just wouldn't find by testing individual AIs. So we really need to think about group-level testing for
Right,
bias.
the emergent bias point.
Exactly. And third, these AI conventions aren't set in stone. They can be changed by committed minorities, but how easy that is depends hugely on how strong the convention is and, importantly, on the specific AI model being used. Those tipping points vary a lot.
So it really pushes our view of AI beyond just single models working in isolation. We have to consider AI societies now. And it raises this interesting point. If these AI agents behave just like humans in these simulations, maybe we could use them to model complex social situations, like how societies handle stress or change.
That's one possibility, yeah. Synthetic social science, almost.
But if these LLM-specific things, like the weird collective biases that don't seem purely human, are significant, then just deploying them into our world needs extreme care,
Yeah.
right? We need ways to spot and fix those uniquely AI-driven dynamics.
Absolutely. The alignment problem gets another layer of complexity. It's not just about aligning one AI's values, but about understanding and potentially guiding the emergent values and behaviors of AI groups, managing bias propagation, ensuring ethical group behavior. Understanding how these norms evolve in AI populations is like step one. It's critical for safe and beneficial AI.
Definitely feels like a vital piece of the puzzle for making AI a genuinely useful tool for society. So maybe the final thought to leave everyone with is this. What strikes you most about the similarities but also the crucial differences between these AI social dynamics and our own human societies? And what might that blend of familiar and alien mean for our future as we become more and more interconnected with these systems?